Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's album review. Today, we're going to be reviewing this guy's album. Well, he's called Paul Kalkbrenner, and the album we're going to be listening to is, what's it called? Parts of You? Is that the one? Yeah, Parts of Life. Parts of Life. So this has been requested by I think it's one of our regular viewers, a big fan of ours, no doubt. I'll put the comment down below. And what's interesting about this request is that we're moving away from German rap to German kind of
techno, is it?
Techno music. So what I'll do is I will just share the screen so we can have a little look at Paul Kalkbrenner's Wikipedia page, the English version of it. So Brett, can you see that?
Yep.
Okay, so his music is described as techno, ambient techno, house, electronica. And I think this is what you've been saying before, Brett. This is kind of what you know, what you sort of think when you think of German, like music from Germany, you kind of think of this style, right?
Yeah, obviously it's very
Electronic music.
stereotypical, of course,
Yeah.
and I know obviously Germany, like England's obviously very cultural, so there's all kinds of music, of course. But here in the UK, when people generally think of German music, they're either going to think of cliche, German beer drink songs or techno or dance music, hypothetically. So, yeah.
Okay, so let's have a look now at the album on Spotify. One moment, please, guys. I have it here. Okie dokie. Okay, so yeah, it's 57 minutes long. And what I found interesting here is that everything's mixed up. So number one is part 11, track two is part 3. So now the album's called Parts of Life. So maybe that's kind of like a clever kind of play.
Yeah.
Everything's kind of mixed up, different parts. So at first I thought it was maybe a mistake or I've got the songs like mixed or something on Spotify, but I think it's intentional. I think that's just how it's been done. So it's quite interesting, quite unique. So what? 15 songs in total. The length
And
of the
does it definitely say 15 parts? Is part 15 definitely the last one? Is it like
15.
definitely
Well,
as in
part
it's definitely
15, yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5? It's not like anything missing.
No, it's part 13. Sorry, 15. I can see that it's track number 10. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
all right.
Yeah. So Brett, you looking forward to it?
Yeah, I am now, actually. I mean, I don't mind a bit. I've said before, a bit of dance. I mean, again, it depends. I think I still generally like pop version of sort of dance electric music. I think when it comes to more extreme stuff, as we talked about previously, anything extreme, it's sometimes a bit too much. But just purely with the different parts, just for I mean, that's probably the least thing to probably go on because it probably will mean nothing. But yeah, interesting. That's different parts and the fact they're not in order. That's really intriguing. So I'm going to look forward to when I'm listening to it. And I'm guessing it's not going to be lyrics to look into. I might look to see about what the parts bits are all about, really.
Yeah. I mean, if I'm making a prediction, I'd say it's more likely that you would like. It's more likely that you would like this more than I'm going to like it, based on musical tastes. This isn't my sort of genre, so I'm not going to get my hopes up with this. But that's a good thing because if I get my hopes up, then there's a lot of pressure on it. So, yeah, don't really know what to expect. I mean, are we going to have words, lyrics of some sort? not so sure. No,
I don't think so.
don't think so.
I'll probably say no. If they are, they're not going to be quite minimal.
Yeah,
I guess I would say, but yeah, I think this by the looks of things and in being DJ's ears, I think it's probably going to be quite put on dance music, techno music. So, but yeah, well, like I said, it's probably better when you have low expectations. It probably works in the album's review favor for you, really.
yeah. So we're going to go ahead and listen to it. Well, I was going to say now. We'll put it like this: with a few seconds, you'll see us, and we'll have listened to it. We'll be ready to review it for you. So, see you guys in a few seconds. So, guys, we've now listened to Parts of Life by Paul Kalkbrenner, and Brett is going to go ahead and tell us what he thought of it.
What the first one I was going to say is that I feel I was quite fortunate because I was actually on the train listening to this album. And I think that probably helped when I was listening to it, because it's the type of thing where if you're just sitting there listening to it, we've talked about it before, they're not really the type of albums to potentially review. So obviously it's a sort of dance electric album. The closest thing we've done something similar is Robot Koch. I think he was German as well, wasn't he, Lee?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's sort of comparison with that there. I do like a bit of sort of dance electric music. This was okay for me. It's sort of in the middle. It wasn't, too extreme. It was very much the same. There wasn't sort of a lot to it, but I felt I could sit and listen to it. But you have to be in sort of the right mood, the right situation to really probably enjoy for what it is. Otherwise, it's a pretty standard sort of dance electric album. Obviously, no real singing. Apart from there was one track, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But like I said, it wasn't too over the top. It just felt nice. I can almost, where you can split the songs, almost where there was a bit more of a chilled vibe to it, and then when there was a bit more of a clubby vibe to it. Otherwise, it was pretty much the same all the way through. And all I kept thinking throughout the album, and it probably doesn't say a lot for the album when you think more about the actual track titles and why they're in that order and what is it trying to say, really. I like to think, I don't know, we'll go through, there's a bit where there's sort of the trumpet was being played, and on the front cover of the album, there is a picture of a trumpet. So I wonder if this is his interpretation of talking about his life. And if it is, that's probably what would be more interesting about it. But otherwise, it was just a very standard dancey electric album. I don't think I can say much more than that, really.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with a lot of the things you say there. I thought you actually probably like it more than what you did. It's more your sort of thing than mine. So I think with this album or any album of this genre, I'm never going to like it that much. It's just not my sort of genre of music. It's just not really what I listen to. There's a reason I don't listen to it, just because I don't particularly enjoy it generally, right? If we're talking about specifically about this album for what it was, some of the stuff you said there, I will also talk about when we go through the songs, because there are certainly some things that I agree with what you said. So I thought that each track generally was relatively repetitive, as one would expect, from this genre of music. However, each track was quite different. So like one track finished, the next one came on, and you could automatically tell it was a completely different track. Whereas sometimes when you listen to this sort of music, it can always sort of sound as if, to me, as if sort of every track is almost the same, or at least very, very similar. Whereas at least with this one, there did seem variety, with each new track that came on. You see what I mean? And I've also wanted to say that, although it was not my preferred genre of music, as I already said, elements of the album weren't bad, particularly the ones that weren't techno heavy. techno might not be the right word here, but you made a point of that earlier, saying that you could call it, sort of split it into two, the kind of more chilled ones and the more kind of, I don't know what your wording was, but the faster ones.
I said more clubby, yeah. One you might listen to in the club, one you'll probably listen to before you go into the club, just chilling in your room.
And so that's exactly what I would say as well. Sort of some of the songs on here are that sort of clubby style, which I didn't particularly like, whereas maybe the other half were more kind of chilled, which I preferred. It's interesting. There were quite a lot of voices, like background voices in these tracks as well, and they all sounded like Afro-American. We'll go through each track and then I'll kind of explain in more detail what I mean. So the first track then was part 11. So it's always an interesting, when you listen to the first track on an album, you never quite know what to expect. So, and this didn't really give us a very good, maybe, what's the word? This wasn't one of the typical songs I would say of the album. So it was a slower than expected. It was a jazzy start. So I was kind of, okay, this is interesting. Then I put I'm not very good with instruments. Was it a saxophone? Was it? Or trumpet?
I think it was trumpet.
Trumpet with a kind of slightly creepy background feel. Not much to dislike about it, but nothing that blew me away either.
Yeah, and I know we've spoken also in the past, where we've talked about just sort of nice songs. The song turns up was just nice, and this album pretty much could sum up the whole album, really. And it was just nice. I said it wasn't offensive, it wasn't too loud, it wasn't too offensive. I found for me the trumpet sounded a bit sort of out of tune. It just sounded a bit, it was a bit weird in a strange way. But it had sort of a nice little build up of it, and like I said, it didn't sort of go too over the top. It was just a nice intro into the album, really. But yeah, sort of a strange feel to it. And I should say, like I said, I didn't hate it. And overall, a lot of songs, they were all right to listen. Like I said, when I was on the train, it was quite nice. But I said we'll probably go for that as we go for each track. So I don't think how much more different I'll be able to say, really.
So the next one was part 3. So this was a very different sound to the previous one. Had a more kind of what I'm going to call a techno start to it. Fast beat, and a few voices have appeared. Feels repetitive, and I quite like the voices part in the background. Kind of, I don't know what they're saying, but it's something like super something. I didn't catch the second word.
Yeah, the same sort of thing there. It's keeping up with this one, even though this was only like one of the maybe shorter. I mean, all going about the same length, but this was only like a 3-minute 30 track. It did feel a lot longer. It got very repetitive quite quickly, which I know it is what you get with dance music there. And you're right, the more interesting was about sort of the voices in the background, really. Yeah, it was just there.
Okay, part 14. Again, there was some voices in the background. Again, always that sort of Afro-American sort of sound. So as in like a black American voice. Again, feels very repetitive. The sound is breaking up, like purposely. It's kind of just a style. I think that actually happened in the previous track as well. And then sort of as the song was going on, or the track, a slight change occurred, but I just can't describe it. It's quite difficult, I think, to describe this style of music for me. And just to note, this was the longest track on the album.
Yeah, that's what I put. And again, we've talked about it. It's really hard to sort of put it. Kind of need to listen to it and sort of talk as we're going through it. And I said I was just more thinking about. So why is this part 14, and why is it at this part of the album? So that's what I kept asking myself more throughout. Otherwise, I actually didn't mind the vibe of this one. Again, really hard to explain to it, but it just felt. I think I've said before, it wasn't too over the top. It wasn't too sorry. Just felt like it felt nice. And that's why I was thinking, okay, maybe this really is meant to be sort of different moments or different stages in his life and how he represents it. And in fact, it was the longest song on the track. And again, we did have some of the voices in the background, which was a nice touch to it.
So the next one was part 7. So again, that sort of crackling sound, faint voice or faint voices. Not sure if it was one or two or more than one or more than one person, but just didn't have much to say on it.
The only thing from this one here, that had a real sort of game feel to it, like 1990s sort of PlayStation kind of vibe to it. And I know PlayStation. This is how boring it was much saying, because I'm going to talk more about a little bit of history on PlayStation. So when they were first sort of promoting themselves against sort of the Nintendo 64, because Nintendo 64 film was a bit more of a kid-friendly one. The PlayStation was trying to be a bit more for teenagers, a bit cooler. And their big thing was like, they used to have actually demos of PlayStations in clubs so people can play them and stuff. And then a lot of the games they had used to have dance techno type music to it to make it more exciting there. So it kind of had that feel to that there, really. So I ended up writing more about the history of PlayStation than the song itself, really.
Okay. So the next one then was part 4. This one had a nice start. Very hard to describe. So I kind of just decided to kind of talk about my feelings rather than do you know what I mean? Rather than sort of try to describe what it sounded like, maybe. So my feelings were just kind of, it was just a repetitive, fast sound. And then sort of towards the end, it slowed down, almost as if it's like you're taking the foot off the accelerator and it's just sort of coming to a halt kind of thing. But yeah, just repetitive.
Yeah, I wish I'd done that now, Lee, because I've literally put not a lot to say in this one. Apart from, yeah, it sort of went slow and got sort of more beat, and then so I really like your explanation of, you know, full throttle and then sort of de-accelerating and stuff. And I think from what I vaguely remember, like listening to it, so when listening to the train, it actually works quite well. I quite enjoyed it in that sense, but in terms of how to explain and why I liked it, it doesn't quite work in the same way, really.
Okay. So the next one then was part 12. Again, there's like a background sounding voice going on. Standard beat, you know, just the boom, boom kind of thing, nothing out the ordinary. Like crystal sounds from time to time going on. This was more of a kind of lazier sort of sound. So I kind of, we're going on to kind of more to what I preferred from the album. I think from what I remember, it goes on to the more kind of chilled out stuff from here. Well, not all of them, most of them. But there was this kind of air voice. It was just so repetitive. It was just kind of getting a bit irritating towards the end.
Yeah, again, I've written the exact same thing. Very repetitive towards the end there. And yeah, this is definitely one where I was saying more of a chilled, slower vibe to it. So this is like where you would listen to your house rather than in the club. However, I actually quite like the sort of vibe and tempo to this one. Like I said, it's not too over the top. It's not too drowning. It's just almost like it keeps you awake. You don't conform to it. It's really hard to explain. It felt like a nice vibe, nice tempo to it. And like I said, I am more influenced because I said I was listening to it and trying to say that probably does help with it there. Otherwise, yeah, it did get very repetitive with it there.
So the next one then was part 2. So when this first came on, it was almost like a kind of sambo beat, that kind of feel going on. You know, like in, I don't know, in Brazil or somewhere, that kind of feel. And then suddenly there was this sort of, I can't explain it, sort of loud music, boom, like more of a louder kind of, I can't think of the word, sort of some sort of loud music playing over it. So the kind of the sambo, what I'm calling the sambo beat was still there. Something a lot louder was playing over it. There was a voice or voices in the background, quite unique sounding, but quite loud in general. So, you know, it's all right.
Yeah, so this one again had that more sort of club vibe to it there. I actually found this one a bit of a toe tap actually. I think it was like more the sound of it. It just felt, you know, I could listen to that, but then it did get a bit too much. And again, not probably the worst over there, but there was a lot going on. A bit of toe tapper, and it was all right.
Okay, so we move on to part 10, which was straight away more chilled. And this is where I made my note here. I prefer this jazzy style to the more fast techno sounding stuff that had been on some of the previous tracks. So that's all I put for that. You know, I just prefer this style.
Yeah, so I think this is where I went here to have sort of like an electric guitar kind of sound to it. And it was almost like the electric guitar was sounding like a voice as well. And yeah, I think I would probably agree with you. I think it was these style of song, again, that sort of nice tempo, nice vibe to it, just quite listenable. But again, I can't really say sort of much more than that, really.
Okay, next one then was part 5. Almost like a faint church choir in the background. Sounds not bad for this one. Then as it went on, some more sounds have been added, almost sort of like a humming kind of sound. So yeah, not bad.
Yeah, so right, John, a bit the same what we've had already. Club sort of mix to it there. I've put just nothing really. I think this is what I wouldn't be able to identify any of these other songs previously, but I think for this one particularly, I wrote down this is probably the most forgettable one. This would be the most forgettable one to it. Because I know we said previously there's not lots of other songs, but for me particularly, for some reason, this one, I felt that was the real pinnacle of real forgettable.
Interesting. That was probably one of the better ones for me. So next one then was part 15. I think I'm getting confused because part 15 because they're all done in mixed up parts. I don't know
why has it done that? What if anyone is listening and they do know this album, they know honestly, because I think I probably would lose sleep. I've lost a lot of sleep with some of these albums we listen, not having the questions answered, but this one particularly, just what's me? Are you meant to listen to in a different part? Would that make it better? I really would like to know.
Okay, so yeah, we are on part 15. So we heard some kind of bells chiming. I think that's the correct word at the beginning of the track. Quite a nice sound going on here. Feels quite chilled, quite a pleasant atmosphere. And again, just glad to be away from the fast beat techno stuff. It was almost kind of trancey. So I think probably in terms of the actual music, the actual beat going on, this was probably my favorite track on the album.
Okay, yeah. I've put a thing here. I said I like this one quite a bit, but I'm not sure why. Again, I'm not sure how to explain it. I think again because it has that more sort of chill vibe to it. Probably felt more different to anything else that was on the album. Even though I quite like the sample ones and the trumpets and like that. Yeah, unusual sounds this one. I've liked this one, but it's just very hard to explain why.
So the next one was part 1. This one had a kind of spacey feel going on, like up in space, or maybe like playing like an 80s computer game, that kind of feel. Upbeat and loud, but it does have trumpets. It was respectable, listenable.
Yeah, okay, up there. I've said about the trumpets. I also said this potentially could be the first track you listen to. It reminds me of the first track, sort of a nice intro to it. Felt a bit different. You had the trumpets from there. A bit of a sort of dancey club sort of feel, but also it always felt it could be more like the dancey clubby type one, but it also felt quite quiet as well. Now, whether that was just maybe the sound on my one particularly, I don't know, but it felt like, I don't know, like I said, it's really hard to explain. It felt really clubby, but it was done quite quietly. So, yeah, a bit of a standout track.
Okay, next up was part 9. This had a very spooky start, quite a different kind of sound going on at the beginning. And then it was like a voice in the background, again, on that same theme of like Afro-American. It sounded like a kind of like an Afro-American rapper, even though like he wasn't really rapping. It just I can't explain it, but I'm pretty sure that's what it was, or that's what I think it was. I don't know.
Yeah, no, the main, I didn't put much about the singer, but I probably do vaguely remember that. But yeah, the main thing was that sort of really sort of scary starts, eerie feel to it. I put here the instrument, the accordion, but I don't think it's an accordion. It's like sort of when you imagine like scary pianos being played by themselves, kind of, which again made it really sort of stand out. And then you had the sort of clapping, which to make it give it more sort of the upbeat bit. So yeah, again, I wouldn't say I loved this track, but at least it was a little bit different, stood out, and there was something about that one.
So the next one was part 13. It was a fast voice from the start, quite chilled again, but it was just boring, just a boring sound.
Yeah, again, sort of slow, sort of went up beats. I did quite like the sort of background music that was to it, but yeah, just sort of again wasn't too much to it. And again, I was just asking myself one question: why is this track 13, part 13? None of the others sort of match up. This is the only one that kind of, and obviously a lot of people talk about 13 as a superstitious number, associated with bad luck as well, kind of thing. So that was sort of more questions I was answering to myself, really.
So next up, we had part 6. So this was one I think you were talking about in your introduction. So yeah, this was wow. You know, there was a guy actually singing. So this was like, you know, a track unlike any of the others. So it was just nice to listen to an actual song rather than just some like a kind of music track. You know, like a actual someone singing. I mean, the singing itself, but there wasn't probably that much in the way of lyrics, but just having a voice there, being quite prominent, was quite enjoyable. So, based on the context of the album, I quite enjoyed this one. So yeah, it wasn't bad and unexpected.
Yeah, echo the same sort of things there. Exactly what you said there. And not only was lyrics, obviously they were in English as well, which could be considered unusual. I don't know. This was the best track for me on the album because, and it's not because there was lyrics to it. I think it probably did help. And again, it's not our album; we didn't create it, so Paul can do whatever he wants to it. But personally, I think you may agree, if there was a few more tracks like this one in between with Dance Up, it'd probably make it a bit more appealing for potentially us, we would say. So it's not right there, but yeah, and again, but even then, it was still just nice. It still had that nice sort of tempo vibe. It wasn't too clubby, wasn't too like spa relaxy. It was just a good listen vibe to it.
Okay, the last one then was part 8. So I was really disappointed with this one because it was the last track. Well, is it the last track? It's not because it's part 8. Was it? Do you know what I mean? I don't know if it's classed as the last track or not. What was that? What was the highest number? How many tracks were there? 15, part 15.
Yeah, 15.
It should be the last. I don't know, but but anyway, it was the last track for us. It just felt quite messy. A lot going on, different sounds. Just wasn't keen on it. I was hoping for a nice ending. You know, like the way the album started. It was, you know, quite a nice introduction. It was quite pleasant, but this was just like a concoction of all different things going on, and just no, it was disappointing.
Yeah, I wouldn't probably go as much as disappointed, but I totally get what you're saying. Just to me, again, it had that sort of good tempo to it. That was the plus side to it. I think it was the same as others, and again, just not a great track, but just not a lot to it. But yeah, it just it's weird because you kind of feel you want to have something different or it's a chance to put a stamp or something for the end of the album. And I tell you what you're saying, I think this didn't live up to doing that. Not that it had to, but yeah, again, and that's sort of really said about there. So the big question for me is, why are the parts in this order and what do the parts represent? I suppose it's probably easier to give titles as part 1, 2, 3 rather than names when there's no lyrics, there's no things to it. But I think having a bit more content to it was what I was questioning more about the album, really.
Okay, so Brett, how would you sum it up?
I said at the start, it's a tough one to sum up. Like I said, it wasn't the worst one to listen to, and I think if you're in the right thing, and I think if we were to listen to it again, without having to review and just listen to it. We'll probably find it quite pleasant at times. Not every track, most of them to sort of listen to. This is sort of my jam in a little way. I could sit and listen to it, but after listening, would I want to sit and listen to it straight away? No, but not the worst. And as I kept saying throughout, I'm more intrigued and just want to know about the different parts, what they mean, what they represent.
Let me ask you then. So you say this is kind of your type of genre, but it doesn't seem like you particularly enjoyed this album. So what sort of albums do you like of this sort of genre of music?
Okay, well, let's say that. So let's start in. So when I say this is the type of genre that I don't mind, I can listen to. It'll never be something that I would ever just go home and sort of listen to as a type, really. Just means when it comes on in certain situations, I don't mind listening to it. I'm not like, oh, turn this off, this is awful. I can just throw it back. It's not something I would normally go home and sort of turn on and listen to, if that makes more sense. So if it comes on, I don't hate it, but it's not something I would sit at home listening to. And I think generally this was, I think I like a bit of sort of lyrics or more voices to it. Again, not like having to as a proper song, it can still be quite dancey elements, but just to have that something difference to it. That's all.
Okay. So for me, like because I'm not really into this genre of music, I was never gonna really like this as such. So I obviously have to bear that in mind. You know, I just can't appreciate this music for what it is. I mean, this might be like really good, might be considered really good, whatever electronic music. You know, for people that are in the know, the people just in generally, right? But for me, because I'm not really into that sort of genre, like I say, I can't really give it a glowing sort of review or anything like that. But it was okay. I would say it got better for me generally because it was more. Say, I suppose you'd say the second half of the songs tended to kind of be a bit more chilled, so it kind of grew on me a little bit. Whereas a lot of the tracks at the beginning were quite what I'm calling sort of techno heavy, which I really don't like. So once any of the sort of the chilled out stuff, that was all right. Didn't mind that. So this was probably like pretty much as good as I could have expected. Really, didn't think I was going to like it in the first place. And it turns out, you know, it's all right. I didn't hate it. It was just a bit, you know, it's all right. You can listen to it. So yeah, I don't really know what more I can say on it. It was okay.
Yeah, I think if I just quickly add as well, I think because we obviously both listened to Robot Culture, and I think it's a good way to compare it because with Robot Culture, even though there's probably more songs of Robot Culture that you probably didn't like as much, but you did find there were probably songs that you definitely preferred now because it had sort of the lyrics where it was a bit more something to it, even though it sort of come under the same sort of genre as such. So, like I said, this would be the equivalent of just being a nice one. It's just, even though they were different, the songs, very much the same throughout, with a slightly different change of vibe, whilst Robot Culture at least was a bit more experimental and would throw a bit more stuff to things to it.
Yeah, with Robot Culture was that one song that I really liked that I put onto my playlist. Yeah. Check it out, guys. We've got our playlist available. We need to actually update them. We haven't done that for ages. Something I want to get around to doing. But anyway, that's it from us. So thank you for the request. If you've got any more requests, guys, let us know if you want us to review any albums from any genre, in any language, whatever it is you want us to listen to. We'll always be honest, as you know. And we will see you on Wednesday for the next reaction video. So thank you guys and take care. Goodbye.